Let's talk about zombie games. Zombie games fill the market. Some might even say they oversaturate it. Of all the zombie games available, however, a good number stand out from the rest. Today, we're going to take a look at some of the zombie games we consider the best, most popular, or most influential. We've tried to restrict it to monsters that are strictly zombies, or zombies in all but name. No headcrabs, no husks, no flood, etc. So let's take a look at the top 10 best zombie games. Have you ever been to an arcade? Have you ever been outside your house? Are you alive? Then you've heard of this game. In 1997, Sega released a rail shooter called The House of the Dead. As a light gun game, players are mainly tasked with shooting zombies, but they can also rescue civilians to unlock different paths and secrets. The House of the Dead puts players in the shoes of Agent Thomas Rogan and his new partner, Agent G, as they uncover the mysteries of mad scientist Dr. Curran. I just feel it's universal that everyone's lost a lot of their childhood allowance to this game series in general, and holds a special place in many of our sugar-filled childhood hearts. The PC and Saturn versions of the game weren't as well received as the original arcade version, but it has still staked its claim in zombie video game history. To this day, fans look back on it as one of the most enjoyable early zombie games. Though not in keeping with what many consider zombie games, Plant vs. Zombies is a surprisingly fun tower defense game from PopCap. This quirky and light-hearted title puts players in charge of defending their home with weaponized plants, facing off against a variety of weird and often entertaining zombies. Plants vs. Zombies was successful enough to receive a direct sequel, a spin-off third-person shooter called Garden Warfare, in which players battle one another as plants and zombies, and the recent Garden Warfare 2. I love it for its particular style of tower defense gameplay and quirky humour. It may not be a serious zombie game, but not every game has to be a hardcore, edgy projection of zombies, and this game is really great at eating up time while on the go. Okay, this is technically a downloadable expansion for the Old West game Red Dead Redemption, and not its own game. However, this has made it to the list because it not only got the zombie bit right, but also got the whole expansion pack thing right too. It wasn't just some map pack or new skins, it was essentially its own, separate game, forming a subplot from the story you've played in the game. The story takes place after James Marston saves his family in the main plot. From here, the story deviates. Somehow, James Marston's uncle becomes a zombie and bites his wife. After killing his uncle, his wife then bites his son, infecting them both. He hogties both of them and sets out in search of a cure. Although a fairly basic opening, it's the many other characters you recognise and know from the main plot that makes this so much funnier. All the characters you know from the story are either infected, or are sprinkled with delightful rockstar humour. Compared to the zombie drab that saturates the current market, it's also fun to tackle this concept in the Wild West. DayZ is an open-world survival game currently in development. It is the standalone successor version of the award-winning mod of the same name. You play in a map populated by other player characters that is littered with zombies. Your only goal? Survive. You can almost make a social experiment just from this game. If you've just spawned, you might be lucky and bump into someone who may help you collect some basic gear and set you off. This said, you may also find someone who just wants you to put your hands up and give your shoes and pants as you watch him run off in the distance with the only things keeping your legs and feet warm. It's odd because originally the threat of death mainly came from either the zombies or your survival needs, i.e. running out of food. But with the introduction of multiple real-life people in the server, some friendly, some not, it becomes a Mad Max type deal out there, where one wrong slip of the tongue and you'll be lit like Swiss cheese. If you'd like to guide and protect a group of survivors, the open-world third-person survival game State of Decay from Undead Labs might be just what you're looking for. State of Decay tasks you with keeping survivors alive in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. It has RPG elements, but also simulation gameplay, as you must build and defend bases. Gameplay includes aspects of stealth and third-person shooting as well, along with strategy. You must obtain and balance resources to keep your survivors alive. To this end, there are other survivors you can interact with. Not all characters can be recruited to your own group, but a majority can, and you can switch between playable characters at will. Although the remastered re-release was criticised by players for not offering enough improvements, State of Decay is still a solid choice for a more survival RPG spin on the idea of zombies. For fans who would rather be the sole survivor, much praise has to be given to Project Zomboid for the open-world game made by the Indie Stone. How long can you survive in a world infested by zombies? That's the question Project Zomboid presents the player with, making it almost a zombie apocalypse simulation as you try to survive for as long as possible. Aside from the basic survival mode, the game also includes several challenge scenarios and a sandbox mode where the player can adjust the game's world conditions. Due to its character growth and permadeath systems, it is sometimes compared to a roguelike, although Project Zomboid is not procedurally generated. The game also has Steam Workshop, so the game is enhanced by many player-enthused mods, which give the game a whole heap of replayability. Project Zomboid is still in early access, so some of its features may change as time goes on. The positive reception from fans to what is currently available suggests the final release of Project Zomboid will definitely find an important place in the zombie market. It may not be a traditional zombie game, but Telltale Games' episodic point-and-click adventure game inspired by the hit TV show The Walking Dead has made its mark on the gaming industry. You play as Lee Everett, a convicted murderer, who finds himself protecting a young girl named Clementine as zombies overtake the world around them. Unlike many games on this list, The Walking Dead is heavily story-driven and places emphasis on players' choices and their interactions with other characters over combat with zombies. While there is a mild amount of action, the major appeal of this zombie game is the difficult decisions it forces you to make and the story's emotional content. Telltale's The Walking Dead was released across 5 episodes. A second season followed it after a short bonus episode meant to bridge the two. While the popularity of The Walking Dead hasn't changed zombie games overall, it is considered a major factor in the resurgence of story-driven adventure games. In 2006, Capcom released an open-world zombie beat-em-up game called Dead Rising, and began one of the most popular zombie series to date. The original game stars Frank West, a photojournalist who must survive a zombie infestation. As a photojournalist, he can take photos of various events and earn points. While there is a story mode, Dead Rising can also be played as a sandbox game. So far, Dead Rising has had a remake, a sequel, a reimagining of the sequel with Frank West returning in place of the Dead Rising 2's protagonist, and another sequel released in 2013. Although the Dead Rising games have survival elements and survivors to rescue, they are very much action games, and boast about the number of zombies that can be rendered on screen at once. The weapon variety is another part of the series' appeal, as just about anything can be used to fight zombies, with varying degrees of effectiveness. Another action-based zombie series comes to us from Valve, called Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 are cooperative first-person shooters about 4 people fighting for survival in the aftermath of a zombie pandemic. In addition to the main story mode, There are other modes to play, including competitive matches where one team plays as the infected. Instead of traditional zombies, Left 4 Dead introduces a wide variety of unique kinds, such as the long-tongued smoker and the passive, until disturbed, witch. And due to the special AI system called the Director, the placement of items and enemies is different every time you play. Left 4 Dead 2 remains hugely popular among co-op fans, even almost 7 years after its release. However, the lack of a third game, aside from persistent rumours, has only contributed to the joke that Valve can't count to 3. Where would a list of zombie games be without Resident Evil? Inspired by a horror RPG called Sweet Home, Capcom's first Resident Evil game in 1996 set the stage for numerous survival horror and zombie games to follow. Since then, the series has grown and expanded, and while some fans feel it has lost its way, the fact remains that horror games might look very different without Resident Evil. Many individual Resident Evil games could be considered among the best zombie games, and it might not be fair to put them all together on the list. The first game set the stage for everything, and followed a group of now legendary characters into a mansion overtaken by zombies and other monsters due to the experiments of the sinister Umbrella Corporation. Although an old game, the original Resident Evil remains a masterpiece. In particular, the remake made in 2002, which has since been remastered in HD, is one of the greatest survival games and zombie games of all time. For their gameplay and story, popularity and/or influence, these are our picks for the top 10 best zombie games. And if you want to see more lists like this in the future, subscribe. And if you want to see another list now, click here for my top 10 Resident Evil monsters, or here for my top 10 most influential 90s horror games.